In an interview with Euronews, Georgian President Salome Zurabishvili explained why she won't leave office when her term ends.
The EU summit starts with Ukrainian leader Zelensky present in Brussels as the member states discuss how they can help Kiev if the US withdraws its support.
The pro-European president of Georgia, Salome Zurabishvili, won't leave office the day her term ends in late December. She considers the newly elected president, the pro-Russian former football player Mikhail Kavelashvili, not to be legitimate. That was one of her main messages during her intervention at the European Parliament.
My legitimacy, in a way, comes from my election, and it comes from the illegitimacy of the recent elections, and it comes from the trust and confidence of the population. It doesn't depend on a building or on a security apparatus or on anything material that they will or will not provide.
Zurabishvili claims that the elections were manipulated through several systems, such as ballot stuffing, intimidation, or buying voters.
I mean, there are many, many ways in these countries in which you can buy the fidelity, the loyalty of people, which is not really fraud, but it's administrative resource.
But the president thinks Georgia is not at risk of a traditional Russian invasion due to the lack of resources from Moscow and their military presence in some Georgian territory. But she does fear something else.
Russia is experimenting a new form of invasion, a hybrid invasion, through elections, through proxies, through authoritative government or persons.
Zurabishvili, who has been president of Georgia since 2018, hopes the EU will act to avoid Russia deciding the foreign policy of the bloc. Dominique Pellicot has been sentenced to 20 years in prison in a historic rape trial that has turned the victim, his wife Giselle Pellicot, into a women's rights hero. Pellicot drugged and raped his wife for nearly a decade, also offering her unconscious body to strangers he had met online. In total, 51 men were convicted of rape or sexual assault. Speaking to reporters outside the courtroom, Giselle Pellicot expressed gratitude for the support she received throughout the 3-month-long ordeal.
Je pense enfin aux victimes non reconnues, dont les histoires demeurent souvent dans l'ombre. Je veux que vous sachiez que nous partageons le même combat. Je souhaite exprimer ma gratitude la plus profonde à toutes les personnes qui m'ont soutenue tout au long de cette épreuve. Vos témoignages m'ont bouleversée et j'y ai puisé la force de revenir chaque jour pour affronter ces longues journées d'audience.
The trial triggered protest rallies around France in support of Giselle Pellicot, who said she hoped that by making the trial public, she would help other women speak up. Crowds gathered outside the courthouse in Avignon on Thursday and cheered in response to the verdict. It also sparked a broader debate around consent. Activists are calling for the country's legal definition of rape to be expanded to include specific mention of it.
Just a few weeks before Donald Trump begins his second term as President of the United States, EU leaders are meeting in Brussels for their last summit of the year to discuss how they can help Ukraine if the US withdraws its support. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has called for united support from both sides of the Atlantic.
Good morning.
We need very much unity between the United States and EU and countries of Europe. This is very important. We need this unity to achieve peace. And I think only together the United States and Europe can really stop Putin and save Ukraine.
But trying to do too much too soon might not help Ukraine, whose invasion by Russia will soon reach its 3-year anniversary. According to the EU's new foreign policy chief, Bashar al-Assad's swift downfall in Syria is important in this context.
Any push for negotiations too soon will actually be a bad deal for Ukraine. All the other actors in the world are carefully watching how we act in this case, and therefore we really need to be strong. Syria shows us that Russia is not invincible and we shouldn't underestimate our own power.
Aside from Ukraine, the EU's 27 leaders will also discuss the situation in Syria.
Bosnia and Herzegovina and the European Union have initialed a border security agreement with EU border agency Frontex on Wednesday in Sarajevo, marking a key step towards EU integration as Brussels holds the EU Western Balkans summit on the same day, intending on strengthening EU Western Balkans integration. Luigi Soreca, the EU ambassador for Bosnia and Herzegovina, spoke on its importance.
The agreement, which is going to be initial today, attests to our partnership, the European Union and Bosnia and Herzegovina, and to our shared commitment to enhance security, stability, and cooperation in this critical area in Europe.
Director for Schengen Borders Henrik Nielsen emphasized the importance of mutual respect and cooperation in the negotiation process.
We have always listened to each other, we have always taken into account each other's concerns, and that has now brought us here today, where we have this fully agreed text, which is really a pleasure for me to note.
This agreement means that Frontex officers will now be deployed at Bosnia's borders, helping identify security needs. According to officials, the agreement will be signed by the end of February or early March.
After concluding a visit to Damascus and meeting the new administration, the UN envoy to Syria, Geir Pedersen, said the country needs a political transition that will be credible and inclusive for the Syrian society. According to the envoy, this process should take place under a UN resolution adopted in 2015 to help negotiate a political solution in the country. Talking to reporters on Wednesday, Pedersen also mentioned of forming a new constitution.
Have expressed there is a lot of hope that we can now see the beginning of a new Syria. A new Syria that, in line with Security Council Resolution 2254, will adopt a new constitution that will ensure that it is a social contract, a new social contract for all Syrians, and that we will have free and fair elections when that time comes, after a transitional period.
It is not yet clear if Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, the main former rebel group now in control of Syria, will pursue such a process. The group has set up an interim administration comprising members of its salvation government. It will oversee the country until March, but the new ruler Ahmed al-Shara have not made clear how the transition to a new fully empowered government would take place.
Germany worries they will lose thousands of Syrian doctors after the fall of Bashar al-Assad in Syria, as some German politicians were quick to call for the return of at least some refugees. Gerald Gass, head of the German Hospital Federation, says there would be significant issues if Syrian doctors were to leave all at once.
Menschen, die aus Syrien zu uns gekommen sind, in einem Krankenhaus arbeiten. Wenn die jetzt gemeinsam sagen, wir gehen jetzt mehr oder weniger über Nacht, dann ist das schon eine Lücke an diesem Standort, die natürlich erst einmal geschlossen werden muss. Und das ist dann eben.
But Assistant Pediatric Dr. Hiba Al-Nayef says that many Syrians now living in Germany are very well integrated.
Deswegen, wenn wir zurück möchten, ja, aber muss man erstmal richtig gucken und richtig den Staat wieder, alles wieder aufbauen. Es ist nicht so einfach und viele Syrer haben hier richtig gut integriert, die arbeiten, die haben ein richtig gutes Leben aufgebaut und es ist sehr schwierig, dass man von Null anfängt. Ne?
Germany became a leading destination for Syrian refugees over the past decade. They have become a significant part of Germany's healthcare sector, which is currently struggling to find enough workers.
Germany wants to increase the size of its armed forces up to 230,000 from the current target of 203,000. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius announced the ambitious plan as he answered questions in the Bundestag. Germany currently has 180,000 active personnel, approximately 20,000 short of its current target. The German armed forces have been struggling to recruit people for years. The targets Pistorius wants to set will further complicate an already difficult objective. Pistorius says the plan to increase the number of permanent staff is to meet NATO's capability targets. NATO demanded its members to increase their defense capacities to boost the alliance's strength following Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022.
More and more Norwegians are facing increased poverty. The impact is seen at the increasingly long queues for the country's Salvation Army Christmas aid. According to their poverty index, 1 in 5 Norwegians struggles to make ends meet. This week, the Salvation Army will distribute food boxes with Christmas food to 1,400 Norwegian families.
Jeg tenkte aldri at jeg skulle bli en person som trengte hjelp på denne måten. Så for meg har det vært en lang vei å gå, faktisk.
After years of high prices, more people are coming to the Salvation Army for help. Most people who come to them also receive benefits from the Norwegian Labour and Welfare Administration. The charity organization is now making an appeal to the government.
Uforsvarlig lave, og det ser vi. Køene våre øker, mange flere trenger hjelp, så oppfordringen jo at sosialhjelpssatsen må økes.
Financial struggles during Christmas this year are especially prevalent in families with children. Earlier this year, the Norwegian National Institute for Consumer Research released a report concluding that social assistance should be increased.